Good evening, guys. Hope you're well, and thank you for joining me for this special edition of Llandough Live. I'm holding this event this evening to allow you to ask questions about, comment on, let me know your views on the planning application that has been submitted for the land at the bottom of Llandough Hill, backing onto Penarth Road. It's been a couple of weeks now, almost 2 months in fact, since I held a similar event like this on the pre-application consultation on the site. That was part of the pre-planning process, and if you tuned into that, you may or you will have seen that I explained that no formal application had been submitted to the council. It was part of the planning process. It's a legal duty that developers have to carry out on certain developments, and that was that stage of the plan. There was a consultation on that. I responded to it. I think a lot of you did as well, and that was that stage. Well, I'm sorry to say that following on from that, the developers have now submitted a full planning application on the site, or it's actually a hybrid application. A lot of technical terms there, but basically they've applied for planning permission on the site, which does mean that an application has gone into the Vale Council. A consultation is ongoing. That closes on Tuesday next week. So it's important that if you do want to comment, let us know your, or let the council and the planning department know your views on this, like I will be doing. Then make sure you take that choice. It's a bit of a shame to be doing this on a Friday evening. I appreciate that we haven't got many things we can do at the moment, but I do try and keep these sort of events away from Fridays if possible, because I know that you have other things on and want to start your weekend. Unfortunately, the way the calendar has fallen, the way that there have been other council meetings that I've had to do on other evenings this week, it meant that this was the only realistic chance I could do it and then still give you some time to get your comments in on the application. So that's why I am holding it tonight. So thank you all for joining me. One thing I would say on this, last time I did this, one of you very kindly shared this event, this video, into the Llandough Old and New residents Facebook page. If there's anyone watching, if you could do that again tonight, that would be really helpful. The only reason I ask is that there are a lot of residents who don't follow my page, and so they might not be aware or might not know how they can get onto this event. Basically, just to make sure that this is shared with and shown to as many people in the village as possible. So if somebody could do that, that would be handy. The way I'll structure this, it'll be quite similar to the last time. I'll give you a brief outline of what the plans involved, how the process is going to work. Following on from that, I will take questions, but please do start asking your questions now. If you've got any in the comments section, I'll then get round to answering those, and then I will advise you on how you can make your comments, representations, and objections before that closes on Tuesday. So that's how we're going to work it this evening. First of all, then, a good place to start would be to explain what this involves for those of you who aren't aware. A lot of you will be familiar with the patch of land at the bottom of Llandough Hill. There are about 5 cottages or so at the bottom. It's directly opposite those and backs onto Penarth Road, where you see the Vale Sports Arena, car garages, etc. That's the location of the site. It then pulls back all the way as far as Cogan Pill Road and towards the estate. So it is a large site, and the plans are for approximately 133 dwellings to be built on that land, about 100 flats in the first block, and then 33 or so houses elsewhere. So it's going to be a very high density application development if it goes ahead, and that is where my concerns come from. Just a bit before I go into that, I have had a few of you get in touch with me to ask, why are you against housing being built in the ward? Well, the simple answer to that is I'm not against housing, full stop. I, like most people, many of many fellow residents who also have concerns about this believe that we do need to build more homes, but the site of those developments does have to be suitable. And I have concerns that this, particularly in relation to access on the site, in regard to the pressures it may cause on services in Llandough. Also, these have intensified since the last time I did this, actually, after things that have happened since Christmas on the drainage and flood risk as well. So those concerns do need to be addressed, and I do think that it's important that we are sure that this is the right thing to do before we go ahead and grant permission. So that's my position on this. This is why I will be putting an objection in, and I know that many others of you have indicated to me that you're going to be doing likewise on that. So I'm not against house building. I do believe that we need to build more houses. I am a very keen supporter of sustainable developments, not across the Vale and elsewhere. We need that. But if you go ahead with building various developments and you don't have that infrastructure in place, you don't take action to not just mitigate but stamp out the risks that causes, you're only going to lead to further problems down the line, and I want to make sure that that's avoided. So that's my take on this, and that's why I will be making these representations, and I know that many of you will be doing likewise on that. The other point I would make, because this is something that I think needs to be considered and hasn't been done to date, is regarding the flooding or flood risk and the drainage, and this is an important point. I did have concerns about this previously when we did the pre-application consultation phase, when I held a Llandough Live event like this. Since then, it's been drawn to my attention that other developments that have gone on elsewhere, there have been issues with flooding and drainage. I'm going to be very careful what I say because I don't want to jeopardize anything, but there have been concerns in the Vale that developments have been given planning permission and assurances were given, the planners didn't spot anything, that there would not be any flood risk, flooding and drainage wouldn't be a problem, and these problems have since turned out to happen. And loss of green space in this area, this is green space, there's trees on there, etc., and effectively building concrete structures, buildings, losing that green space, I fear could very well make those matters worse. We see on Llandough Hill as it is, there are issues with the water flowing down the hill from the drains there. I don't want to take that risk, and I think that we need to get categorical assurances on that there is not going to be a problem. I don't think we can do it, well, okay, I think this is going to be all right. I think that we need to be sure on this, because we've seen what happens when they get that wrong, and it does lead to quite difficult situations developing. If you just bear with me, I'm not quite sure what's gone on here, but I can't see the comments that are coming in. I can see that some of you have commented. Let me just see if that works here. Yes, thank you, got them up. Sorry about that. I have got used to doing these now and using technology, but occasionally I'm not an expert in this. But thank you. Good evening to Pam, James. Thanks for joining me. Thanks, Claire, for sharing that, and Tracy as well. James, evening as well. I see you've got a question there. Given how far this has already gone, what is the likelihood, if the community got behind this, that it could be stopped or prevented? Basically, it will be decided according to planning law. I'm going to be calling the application in to the planning committee. I want the planning committee themselves to vote on this rather than officers using delegated powers, as can happen with developments. It's an issue of public interest. It's one that lots of people have an interest in, and I think it's important that it goes through that process. The simple answer to that is that we need to find a reason in planning law to object to it, and then we need to convince the planners and the planning committee on that. I personally believe that this does contradict planning law. There can be cases where things go either way. I think that there are issues with access there. I think that it's not in keeping with the character of the area, but I will go on to explain those further into this, if that's all right, James. The point I would make regarding representations on this, and this is a completely separate issue, but I just want to put this into context. The boundary review that we've recently had in Llandough and across the Vale, many of you will be aware, lots of you will be aware, because you engaged with that process on an absolutely astounding scale. I was astonished by the level of engagement on that. You will recall that there were plans by the Boundary Commission. They were brought forward that would have scrapped the Llandough ward. It would have meant that Llandough didn't have an electoral ward in its own right. It would have lost its identity as a distinct local community and would have been merged with the Cornerswell ward in Penarth, which goes from Andrew Road and the junction there right the way back up into Penarth town. And I think that Llandough has very different needs to that. To the Cornerswell ward, lots of reasons why I didn't think it was in the community's interests, and there was a consultation held by the Boundary Commission on that. Lots of you got involved. 117 Llandough residents in total responded to that consultation. All of you objected to that. I know that the Llandough Allotments Association wrote in as well, a prominent community group. I know that Llandough Community Council wrote in, so there was big engagement with that process. And electoral boundaries are not something that tend to capture the public's imagination. They pass people by quite a lot of the time. We've seen with, just to put it into context, 117 Llandough residents wrote in about the boundary review. A huge number. We're a ward of 1,500 or so electors, so almost 1 in 12, 1 in 13, if my maths is right, actually bothered to write in to object to that. Across the rest of the Vale, so there's 47 other council wards in the Vale, Llandough is one of those 47, just one person wrote in regarding any other ward in the Vale. So they received 126 representations in total. Some of them came from local MPs, some of them came from councillors like myself, one of them came from the Vale of Glamorgan Council's cabinet itself. And then the rest of them were Llandough residents fighting to keep the Llandough ward, apart from one other resident in the Western Vale who wrote about the proposed boundaries there. So that's how much engagement that we saw there. It shows how much Llandough cares about keeping its arrangements, keeping its identity as a community. It's completely unprecedented to see that level of interaction on that. And the key point on it is that the Boundary Commission listened to what you had to say. They agreed with your representations that Llandough shouldn't be merged with Penarth. It should remain as a distinct ward. And now in their final recommendations that they've brought forward, they don't propose scrapping the ward. They don't propose merging with Cornerswell. They propose keeping Llandough as a single member ward as it is. And I will say, in no doubt about that, other representations were put in regarding other proposals that the Boundary Commission brought forward, other than a minor change in Dinas Powys, where they sought to keep the 4 councillors instead of taking them down to 3. The Boundary Commission stuck with their original proposals, but in Llandough, because of what you did, the representations you wrote in, the effort you went to, you showed that you cared, you showed that you didn't want that to go ahead. They listened and they changed. So that's why it's important that when a consultation happens, that we all get involved with it and make sure that we make our views known, because that's going on. I can just see that Greta Sullivan has commented, hi Greta, that you can't see the comments on your iPad. Oh no, now you can see them, that's sorted. So yeah, that's the situation with it. Do get involved with this if you want to make change, because if you don't let the people know who are making these decisions what your views are, then they assume you're happy with what's being proposed. Now, you may well be, that's absolutely fine, but if you're not, if you don't want that to happen, then please make sure that you object to this. So going back then to what these plans involve. It's 133 dwellings approximately. It's a hybrid planning application. Initially, they're applying for full permission for the access and the roads and drainage into the site, and then outline permission for the actual development itself. So they will need at some stage before building to obtain full permission on that. But this is important. This is the stage where we need to get representations in on this. So that's what it involves. A couple of you have talked about the footpaths that they propose putting in there. I think it's great that potentially there will be more footpaths, but not at the expense of some of the proposals. We have to look at what's in front of us first and foremost, and that's why I have these concerns, and I know lots of you do too on that. Comment from Max Wallace. Evening, Max. Thanks for joining. Keen on the drainage issue from rainstorms. The 23rd of December storm was basically 45 million millimeters, not million, that would be, I think we'd all be underwater with that, of rainfall over 4 hours. The design level storm is double that, but this says avoid discharge from the site for the majority of rainfall events of less than 5 millimeters, so that looks quite inadequate. Max, I share your concerns regarding the drainage on this site. I don't think we can take a risk with saying things may be all right, we think we've got this under control. We've seen what's happened up at the playing fields, and we need to make sure that we don't have similar events elsewhere. The fact that planners have got it wrong before does lead me to have serious questions about this, and I think that means that we do need to be more cautious about this than we otherwise would be. I'll be completely honest. Back in December, when we did the pre-application consultation, my main concerns were relating to access to the site rather than the drainage. So I've learned something over this. I think it's important that I respect that when new information comes forward, when other things happen elsewhere, you should take account of them. And that's why I want to be getting categorical assurances on this, because I don't want to see anything going wrong here. So that's one of the grounds for objection, or potential grounds for objection. It might be a good idea now then to cite some of the other grounds, because when you write into the planning department, if you're going to be objecting to this, you need to make sure that you cite these. So the first main ground of objection I would cite would be the drainage concerns. Gone through that in quite a lot of detail, so hopefully you've got information on that. The one thing I would say on this is that I will be providing a transcript for you afterwards. If you're not on the mailing list of my regular e-newsletter, please do sign up. If you email me at george.carroll@valeconservatives.org.uk, I'll make sure you're added to the mailing list and that you will get that transcript. I sent an email out last week, maybe the start of this week, confusing the days a bit there, setting out the grounds for objection. I was conscious that there's not that much time before this closes, so I have circulated that already. I will circulate that again. Please sign up if you're not on there already. It is difficult sometimes to take everything down when I'm going through it quickly and talking you through it, so I do have a written version of all of this. Sign up and I will make sure that you get that. That's the one ground of objection. The other one is to do with access. We all know what Llandough Hill is like at the moment. It's a narrow road. A lot of people use it as a rat run to get into the village. Speeding problems on there. There's not a pavement all the way down. The issue we have is that the entrance to this site coming off Llandough Hill, that's going to cause, I think, potentially a large number of extra vehicles going down there. Well, it will cause that on the basis that that if you're putting 130 dwellings on the site, then that's, I mean, not everybody has a car, but I think the majority of people have access to them. Many people have access to more than one car. Many households do. So that will have an impact there, and impact on road safety as well. There have been accidents on Llandough Hill in the past. I'll keep that vague because I don't want to draw attention to anyone without their permission. But I don't want to see that happen again. No one wants to see that happen again. I have previously asked the Vale Council if they could put the pavement, the footpath, all the way up the hill on that, and I've always been told no, that's not going to be possible because we simply don't have the space to construct that sort of structure. I have to take the Highways Department at their word on that. They're highways engineers. I'm not. I have been pushing on that because I know a lot of you want that on Llandough Road, and particularly those of you living on Willowmere. So I have raised that several times before, and I was told no. So making traffic problems in the area worse, I don't think is a particularly smart move to make. The other thing I would say, another point that I think is important to raise in representations that you make, is that on this site, you're going to have 133 dwellings. We need to make sure that there are sufficient and adequate public services in the area for people to cope, to service them. I mean, we've got to think about the pressures it may put on Llandough School, the pressures it may put on GP provision and other things like that, on transport, those sort of things. And the other thing as well, and it's something that's raised with me an awful lot, is Llandough doesn't have a shop. Well, we've got the spa in the hospital, but that's not like a community shop. People talk fondly of when we had the shopping precinct on the estate. That's not there anymore. Are there the sufficient amenities locally to be able to cope, to be able to service this development? I would suggest not, and we should be making sure that that provision is available before we start with a development. I think you need to get that order right. And the other thing I would say is the character of the area. I mean, the bottom of Llandough Hill, the bit where the proposed entrance point is, it's a sort of semi-rural area. It's 5 cottages there. It's trees, and there are trees and woodland there. Putting 100 flats there, is that in keeping with the character of that area? Personally, I think no, it's not. I would be citing that to the planning department and saying that this isn't what goes with the other houses and dwellings in that area. And also the ecological impacts. I mean, plenty of trees on that side at the moment. Developers claim they're of poor quality. I would ask for more information on that. Losing those trees, do we want to be losing this green space? I mean that's something that needs to be considered. Potential for habitat destruction and impacts on wildlife and other species, that all needs to be considered as well. So those are the main grounds of objection. They will all be in my e-newsletter, so please do, if you're not already signed up, send me your email address and I will make sure that you're added to this. I will just go through the comments to see what other people have been saying. Tracy Scott, evening Tracy, just making the point really that the water runs down the top part of the hill regularly. Yes, it does. It's something that I've frequently raised. It needs to be sorted. That does, but again, taking away green space, is that going to add to drainage problems? I think that that's something that really does need to be considered and treated with prominent concern on that. So those are the main grounds for objection. Now, the big question, how do I object or put my representations in on this? Well, the first thing that you need to do is you can either go onto the council's planning portal, which is online, and there's sort of an online form where you can comment and do that. So please do that. Or alternatively, if you email planning@valeofglamorgan.gov.uk, that will get through there as well. But if you do that, please make sure that you quote the application number in the subject line or somewhere in your email, and that is 2020/01590/HYB. So that's 2020/01590/HYB. B, put your comments in there. If you've got any questions, if you want to send it to me first so that I can have a look over it, if you want to do that, that's absolutely fine as well. More than happy to help on that front. One other point I would make on this, and I think that this is something to bear in mind, I don't want to see the development as currently proposed going ahead. I don't think that concerns that I've raised have been adequately addressed thus far, at least. Please, if you are going to make comments, emphasise the fact that if the council do grant planning permission, I think that they shouldn't at this stage, but if they do grant permission for this, then there needs to be compensation to Llandough and the village and all residents for the impacts that the development will have on the area. And there is a system in planning law known as Section 106 monies. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, loads of you will be familiar with that already, which does fund community projects. There are various things that can be funded. They can go on education provision, they can go on sustainable transport, they can go on sport and recreation, or they can go on public art. Lots of different planning criteria as to how these monies are allocated. I could do a whole seminar on that, to be honest with you, but the simple point I would make is emphasise that if planning permission is granted, then substantial Section 106 monies need to be provided to the community to enable the community to cope with the impacts of the development. So that's one other thing I would ask you please to emphasise on that. A couple of the comments have come in. Tamsin, good evening, Tamsin. I don't remember getting the e-newsletter. Could you send again? Yes, I will be sending the e-newsletter out. I probably won't have time to do this evening because I'll have to sit down and go through the transcript to provide that. I will be sending something out over the weekend in advance of the deadline, so that's that. Greta, could you repeat the email address, please? Yes, it's planning@valeofglamorgan.gov.uk. I'm assuming you meant the planning email address there, Greta. In case you meant my email address to sign up for the e-newsletter, that is george.carroll. There are 2 R's and 2 L's in Carroll, just to make sure that you get the spelling right so that it goes to the right email address at valeconservatives.org.uk. Question from Pamela. Evening, Pamela. Will my objections which I sent in before the application went in be considered again? I'm not sure whether, are you referring there, Pamela, to the pre-application consultation, or are you referring to the full to the planning application that's gone in? I'm not entirely sure. The only point I would make, if in doubt, send again. If you've just got the email in your sent items box, it won't do any harm to forward that on again and send it in again. Better to be safe than sorry on things like this. It's better to send it in twice. They've got admin staff who can sort that all out. Better for that to happen than for your representations not to be received and seen, because then, of course, your voice won't be heard, and that would not be a good position to be in at all on that. So, oh, Pam has said the pre-application. Well, the pre-application details will all be forwarded, but I would suggest to make your objections stand out, send them in again so that they're taken as objections sent in to the planning application and not just part of the pre-application report. So that would be my take on this. Please send them in again, Pam. Other than that, I've pretty much gone through everything. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour on this. If you have any further questions, do email me, send me a message on Facebook, message me on Nextdoor. If you want to call me, I'll happily chat things through with you as well on that. But really, I'd just like to thank you all for joining me. Before I sign off, I will go through the comments once again to make sure I haven't missed any questions. One, what is the deadline to get these objections in? The deadline is the 16th, which is Tuesday, I think, either Monday or Tuesday. Get them in as soon as you can. Make sure you get them in by the 16th. Any problems sending them in, get in touch with me and I will help you out with that. So Any other questions? As I've said, please do send them across to me. I will be sending a full summary of what we've discussed this evening on this Llandough Live special out in my e-newsletter. So if you haven't signed up already, please do. It will also be available to watch back on both my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel as well. Don't mock the YouTube channel. The only reason I've really set it up is so that I can put a link to the videos that I do for Llandough Live in my e-newsletter. But if you do happen to be on YouTube and want to have a look, go and have a look at that as well. So other than that, not much else to say really, other than to wish you all a very good weekend. It's a shame that we can't meet in person. If we had been able to meet in person, I would have booked out either the Memorial Hall or the Royal British Legion Club and held a public meeting on this. That is a better way of doing this, but in these difficult times that we're in, that obviously isn't possible. This is the next best way of reaching you all, communicating with you all. I hope that you found it useful and beneficial. So please do have a good weekend. I hope we can see each other in person again soon. Thanks for your comment, Pam. I will get back to you on your email or message once I've signed off on here. Hopefully I will get to see all of you in person very soon. I do miss being able to go door to door and speak to you directly. I think that's the best way of engaging with you, especially those of you who perhaps aren't online and perhaps miss out on that. I do hope we can get back to that soon. In the meantime, I'm doing all I can to make sure that I get the message out to you, make sure that you know what's going on, and I'm on hand to answer any questions that you have. But again, that's not within any of our control. We can only hope that the vaccine rollout goes well and that we can do things in person soon. But other than that, have a very good weekend. And as ever, it's been a pleasure joining you all this evening. Thank you very much. Have a good one.